These files were never meant to be public, but someone reopened them. This is the Dark Bureau. Profit thrives in the shadows whenever transparency falters, and global commerce is no different. Consider a luxury handbag purchased with a carefree swipe in Paris, or an exquisite silk scarf shipped directly from Singapore's dense vertical warehouses. For millions, these items are hallmarks of aspiration and access. But threaded through this world of shimmer and prestige lies another reality, a labyrinth where authenticity and deceit blend seamlessly, where the origins of wealth and luxury are as carefully disguised as the goods themselves. The commerce looks benign. The underlying system is anything but. From rural factories in China to chic boutiques in Europe, a hidden supply chain churns. It produces look-alike handbags of uncanny quality and distributes them along routes that evade both regulatory scrutiny and conventional investigation. The questions persist despite years of crackdowns and headlines. How do such prodigious flows of counterfeit luxury products persist despite countless interventions? Why do profits keep surging even when enforcement appears relentless and public? The answer begins with a complex machinery designed for camouflage, a system cloaked in the guise of legitimate trade, yet optimized to funnel vast sums for those who operate in the shadows. Luxury counterfeiting is rarely just the act of a criminal enterprise toiling in the dark. Instead, it's the residual effect of choices made in distant conference rooms and policy circles. Brand strategies tightening exclusivity, governments enacting tougher customs and border rules, and, crucially, a flood of technological platforms eager to capitalize on gaps in the global marketplace. These forces, often well-intentioned, inadvertently fuel the very networks they seek to suppress. Visible law enforcement actions, news conferences spotlighting towering piles of seized handbags, watches and silk, offer only a narrowly framed glimpse of a much larger, more adaptive organism. The machinery beneath is composed not simply of people or goods, but of sophisticated interconnections, a mesh of logistics, finance and communication that constantly rewrites its own playbook to stay ahead of those sworn to contain it. To comprehend how the world arrived at this juncture, every critical link must be followed in detail, from the immediate aftermath of billion-dollar seizures, through ports and shadowy ledgers, to the brokers and silent buyers who care more for discretion than authenticity. This clandestine economy, woven together by necessity and design, has matured into an alternate architecture of commerce, one that depends on secrecy, reinvention, and the steady erosion of boundaries once considered unbreachable. In this system, luxury is only surface. Its true value is defined by the networks that redistribute risk, reputation, and return. The aftermath of major operations floods international newsrooms with striking images. Neat rows of confiscated designer wares, carefully displayed under the glare of police lighting, regularly punctuate financial headlines. These moments, though dramatic, denote only the visible outflow of a deeper, largely unseen ecology. True scale reveals itself elsewhere, in the anonymized lines of customs data, in logs of encrypted servers handling millions of daily trades, within spreadsheets tracking the movement of funds through banks and digital wallets that span continents. Rather than a monolithic crime syndicate, the counterfeit luxury world is an evolving web of partnerships, middlemen, and opportunistic brokers who profit by remaining elusive, shifting faster than the authorities can document or dismantle. Historical context frames its rise. What began as a marginal affair, small batches of imitation goods peddled in crowded city alleys or surreptitious market stalls, exploded over the past 2 decades. East Asia became both the epicenter of rising luxury demand and the laboratory for new supply chain ingenuity, as e-commerce compressed global distances. Shifting tastes collided with borderless access, turbocharging demand for status symbols at every income bracket. Counterfeit operations, in turn, evolved their own methods. Where once simple cash transactions and local couriers sufficed, now the trade is engineered through layers of financial complexity. Shell companies sprout in Hong Kong or Singapore. Profits are hidden among manipulated invoices and false freight charges. Port logistics adopted modular shipping and frequent document changes, ensuring each consignment appears unique, each paper trail unrepeatable. In the rare event customs enforcement delivers a blow, the network self-heals, relying on a decentralized model of regional cells and distributed control that defies legacy law enforcement strategies. The architecture of this parallel economy is anchored in finance, particularly in the system's capacity to layer flows. At its core is the practice of obscuring ownership and origin. A single transaction might traverse multiple currencies, hop across borders using back-channel digital wallets, and ultimately land in the books of a shell entity registered in a secrecy jurisdiction. Invoicing has become the cloak. The jargon of shipping and settlement is routinely twisted into covers for illicit cargo. High-value transactions rarely touch physical cash. Digital assets and cross-continental payments, sometimes automated, sometimes splintered, erase the links between supplier and ultimate beneficiary. The result is a system that operates less as a fixed hierarchy and more as a responsive algorithm, a shape-shifting nexus built to mask every signal and erase every trace. Those tasked with policing this invisible commerce face unprecedented difficulty. Border investigators, customs analysts, and financial compliance divisions now chase signals across the digital ether, following fragments of evidence scattered among cloud servers, dissecting encrypted group chats, and mapping out distributor and supplier relationships on digital walls. A single lead might expose a distribution network stretching from regionally specialized production hubs through layers of brokers using anonymized courier chains and onto ephemeral e-commerce storefronts that vanish soon after each sale. The investigative lens must now focus on process as much as personality. The actors shift, but the system structure is designed to distribute risk and replace fallen nodes without pause. Global commerce, the very infrastructure of shipping, finance, and digital connectivity, has become a tool manipulated by both sides, its efficiencies exploited for fraud as easily as for legitimate profit. A watershed moment arrived when digital commerce platforms, originally tailored for small and mid-sized sellers, were scaled up into arenas capable of hosting massive counterfeit distribution. Here, shell storefronts are spun up overnight to move contraband across entire continents, utilizing platform-based escrow services and a patchwork of intermediaries. Delivery networks, retooled for convenience, morph into opaque arteries for illicit transfer. The parcel that arrives in a major city is virtually untraceable to its true origin, and even less connected to the broader criminal enterprise of which it is just a fragment. In practice, legislative and enforcement gains in one place are almost instantly offset elsewhere. As soon as raids disrupt a particular node, the system fragments, shifts location, and resumes under new guises. The very technologies that promise transparency and access for all become the backbone of an economy built on obfuscation and speed. Case studies provide further clarity. In one prominent investigation from southern China, authorities exposed a structure densely interwoven between the Pearl River Delta and global consignees, with nodes in Europe, North America, and across Southeast Asia. The operation leveraged AI-generated invoices, each uniquely tailored to sidestep automated compliance checks, decentralized payment rails that moved money at speed and scale, and a series of bonded warehouses deliberately kept beyond the immediate purview of customs oversight. As law enforcement prepared coordinated action, financial operators siloed the profits, moving entire balances overnight through digital wallets and offshoring them in a flurry of rapid transactions. Investigators found only digital smoke, the assets already vanished. For every such network exposed, multiple new iterations spring up, sometimes incorporating the lessons of what brought their predecessors down. Amidst these ongoing battles, systemic weaknesses in financial oversight have surfaced as critical vulnerabilities. Whether through overextended compliance teams or by policy design, financial institutions often fail, or in some cases, elect not, to flag questionable flows. Bank compliance officers, overwhelmed by market expansion and deliberate obfuscation, can miss red flags buried in mountains of documentation and algorithmic filtering. Legal obligations span borders, but regulatory loopholes, especially in offshore centres with high volume trade, enable the system to pivot, exploiting delays, jurisdictional ambiguities, and competitive pressures that disincentivise aggressive scrutiny. The distinction between legitimate luxury trade and covert counterfeiting becomes less a clear line than a constantly moving zone of risk. Institutional inertia and fragmented responsibility are not mere technicalities. They are the means by which these shadow flows integrate with the mainstream economy. The consequences far exceed what can be tallied through lost company profits or diminished government tax revenues. By laundering massive amounts through otherwise legitimate businesses and financial systems, interconnected counterfeit networks undermine the credibility of banking and weaken trust in the entire edifice of international trade. For end consumers, there is a deceptive sense of safety built on curated online marketplaces or glossy physical stores. In reality, millions are exposed to sophisticated fraud, fake products, and the indirect impacts of compromised supply chains. Platforms complicit, whether knowingly or by ignorance, see reputational crises spill over into legal risk. Governments, meanwhile, must balance the imperative of expanding trade with the need to maintain enforcement strength, a tension that is financially and diplomatically costly. Structural analysis indicates that each time enforcement tightens, counterfeit operations adjust, sometimes at the prompting of market needs, sometimes in anticipation of the very laws intended to stop them. Institutional responses vary. Some governments, particularly in East Asia and the European Union, have deepened cross-border cooperation, launching shared intelligence platforms, investing in digital forensics, and mandating stricter compliance from banks and logistics providers. Multinational task forces attempt to chart the intricate mapping of legal and illicit flows, linking shell entities to digital payment rails via detailed forensics. However, the system's adaptability means that every new legal or technical intervention is met with a commensurate upgrade on the part of criminal operators. Better encryption, more nuanced invoice fraud, fresh exploitation of cross-jurisdictional gaps. The result is not a clear moment of victory, but an endless cycle of adjustment, learning, and escalation. The war against counterfeit luxury crime becomes, in effect, a war of technological and procedural iteration. The landscape today is one of ambiguity, with authentic brands and counterfeit sellers both empowered by the same infrastructure, blurred at the edges. Luxury goods are trafficked not just as objects of desire, but as tools in a larger game of global risk shifting. Every consumer, unaware, becomes a possible participant. The authorities now recognise that visible raids and dramatic cases represent only the surface, a sign of detection, not prevention. The underlying dark network, left largely undisturbed, continues to map, adapt, and remake both legal structures and market norms in its own image. Ultimately, the struggle to contain counterfeit luxury is not just a battle over goods or money, but a crucible shaping the next phase of global financial crime. Deep understanding of how clandestine systems mutate, embed themselves in legitimate flows, and outpace attempts at containment will be essential for market stability, regulatory credibility, and ultimately for any institution or consumer that weighs the value of trust. As this global shadow enterprise evolves, so must those who wish to challenge it, learning not only from its aftermath, but from its structure, its persistent adaptation, and its power to redefine the boundaries of commerce itself.